Hey everybody, welcome to another video. I'm sorry it's been a while since I've posted something. I wanted to get something up quick. I'm working on an overnighter. It ended up being an overnighter attempt. And I'll go into details in that video following this video, but I wanted to get something up 10-15 minutes. So I'm out hunting with my brother, and we're up above a small town here in Utah. We're up in the foothills, about 7,000, maybe a hair over 7,000 feet elevation, but there's snow. It's a little bit chilly and everything's soaking wet, so sun's warm though, that's nice. So I wanted to do a video about how I get a fire started when it's soaking wet. But just to give you an idea of what kind of country this is got a lot of this going on. Real pretty out here, but like I said, you can just see the water coming off everything everywhere, which makes elk hunting kind of hard because you hear the snow and ice melting and it sounds a lot like elk. So, which sounds weird, but it's the way it is. But anyway, got some things set up here behind me. I can show you that. But yeah, I've gathered up some tinder here, and I got my silky saw, and I've got a few sticks, but you notice the problem with them, they are all very wet. So we're gonna separate things into dry and mostly dry and wet piles, and then use the tinder that I got over there. That I tried to find the driest tinder possible, but that's not always possible. So what I got to do is I got to find something that I can throw a spark into that'll get this thing going, and I got more wood to collect. That's not enough to do anything. So let's do it. I think it's recording. I took a gerb. Yep. Red borders when you're colorblind are bad. This is some of the thing I'm going to look for. Is out here on the sunny side of slopes is a lot of this grassy stuff, and I'm just going to be real picky about what I grab, but it's going to take a minute. I'm going to be doing this for a minute, just running through and just picking up bundles of that and then going through literally by hand and pulling out the wet ends of it and getting rid of it, because that won't burn, obviously. So that's step one, is I need this, and then I've got my favorite secret weapon, the pine tree. I'm going to swing you around here. Where are ye at? Right there. Notices there's a dead pine. I'm gonna walk over there and get some, I think they're white pines here. I'm gonna go over there and grab some pine sap, and that should help me get this going. Never kneel on a cactus. Sorry about that, I'm just pulling cactus spikes out of my knee. Knelt on a cactus. Alright, so this is what I got so far, and some of it is slightly damp. You can feel it when you put your lips to it, but I'm going to get about double this. Even though I think this is probably enough, I still want a bit more. Head over to the pine tree, gather this on the way, and what I've basically been doing is taking my knife and going up to it, grabbing a few stalks at a time and just snipping them off, holding my hand. So I mean, it gets slow, but what are you gonna do? You want a fire, you gotta make sacrifices. So gonna go ahead and set this aside and go over the pine tree, and we'll meet you over there. Alright, so here's the pine tree I was talking about. It's a bit bigger than it looked from back there on the top of the hill. But what usually happens is with these pine trees, oh, it is good and dry though, we'll take some of that, but usually happens is the elk will rub up on them with their antlers, get the velvet off their antlers, and they'll just tear a whole side of the tree up and it'll kill them. But this, to me, looks like it died from beetles. This is the tradition here right now. Seems to be what's happening with all of them. So I'm going to grab a couple branches from this, but there's another pine tree even closer there, and it's got a good couple branches that'll work even better. And then there's the scrub oak. I'll have to find one that's drier than that, but there's plenty of it around. So let's get to finding wood, and we'll be right back. All right, this is what I'm talking about. Is this branch right here has just been absolutely tore to pieces. It's just the deer and elk will rub on these things and get all the way up in the upper branches here, take all the bark off, and you just got a big dead branch like that. So I just grabbed a few of these drier needle covered branches from that last tree, and then I'm going to get this branch and maybe into that one, and that I'll use to kind of shave down and split up and to use it as the main fire starter. Now lower down on here, like this guy, still got some life left in it, and so we don't want to go cut it too low or you end up with sap in there. That's not even a pine, that's just a shrubbery. A shrubbery! That is quite sap covered. I can show you this one. Yeah, it's covered in sap and certainly smells like Christmas. But I'm going to cut that in half and work at this and get some, maybe make a feather stick. I'm not really into that, but it might work out. Yeah, that one's good and dead, and it is absolutely just covered in sap. That is crazy how much sap is oozing off of that, and that is highly flammable. Good stuff for fire starting right there. So let's go put these back and get some more. We need a lot more wood than this, but these are two really good examples of stuff you want to look for to help you keep a fire going with wet or damp wood. All right, this is what we got going on down here. I've got my basic what I'm gonna make into my nest, and then we've got some bigger stuff. This is oak, most of it's rotten. I don't know if you can see the end there. It's pretty rotten on the inside. Some good wood there, but it'll all burn anyway. Got some pine in here and some more of those are the pine branches that I got, just that guy right there. And then all the rest of this stuff. Hello. All we got to do now is separate all these sticks into what's going to be wet and what's going to be dry. The stuff on the end there going to be the drier stuff, and then the stuff, you know, the wet stuff's going to be wet stuff. So I want to separate, especially this piece right here. That's really quite wet. And then we're going to put it all together, and I'm going to put that on top when I get my spark into that. And I got my phone underneath, and the reason is my phone's black and it's hot. And so as it sits here on this dry rock in the sun, that phone, with the heat coming off, it's going to help dry it out even more. Yee, let's do it. I'm sorry, you're going to have to look at my shadow. Too bad. So, like I said, I'm going to leave I don't know if you can see this guy right here. We're just going to leave that in the sun on my phone. It's a little bit windy, but with the heat coming off my phone down here, we should be all right. And I'll put gloves on because there's all kinds of spiders and critters that live underneath this bark, including scorpions, and I'd prefer not to get stung by one of those today. So this stuff, it has the smell of rot, but everything under the bark, moldy, wet, we're going to tear that off and toss it. But this is the dry side's going to go up as it lays on the ground to be part of the what I call the fire lay, and that's just to get it off the wet ground in there. And yeah, that should do. It'll burn eventually, but it doesn't have to be perfectly dry. It just has to be dry enough. Now, where did I put my saw? Where did I put the saw? I always put things down and forget. It's in my back pocket. Something's wrong with me. All right. So first step, let's start breaking this stuff down. If it snaps easy like that, that's dry. And we're gonna put this stuff in kind of a dry pile. That's all dry. If it flexes like that before it breaks, kind of wet. So we're gonna set that in another pile over here somewhere. And we just want to separate everything by dry and mostly dry. This thing is just rotten. It's gonna go down here in the bottom, so we'll put it over there. Same with this thing, and it's pretty wet and like all the bark's flexible. The bark's flexible like that on something that's been dead that long. Wet, so we're gonna put it over there. That thing, dry, mostly dry. So I'll put it here in my mostly dry pile. And I'm just gonna go through and do this as quickly as possible and get all this done, debarked, because there's moisture under all the bark. Like you can see, all this is wet. On the other side is mostly dry, so it's going over here in the wet pile. I'll just get that done, and we'll get this going, because I want a fire. I want to warm up my feet. taking the pine needles that are really dry and I'm putting them down right on top of the fire lay here. I want them just stuffed on there. They can burn, but they can also ignite and release pressure so quickly that it puts the fire out unless they're ultra dry. And these things are really quite dry, so this should just come up like a tinderbox, especially with how dry these ones are, which is quite nice. So I'm gonna set that there and continue with my twig snapping and separating of wood. This will all make sense when you have a fire and you don't have to go through a lot of fuss to get the fire going and staying going. I'll move all this stuff, it's getting a bit in the way. Right there. Where are my pine branches? There's a pine branch. Whoa, throwing my knife around. All right, so there's a knife I'm testing out. A little bit wet under the bark, so I'm gonna strip that off and kind of carve that down right on top of a rock, so if I slip, I ruin my edge. Oh, it smells like Christmas. And yeah, this is what an elk will do to a branch, though. They rip it up pretty bad. So yeah, nice and dry, but I'm gonna cut this into smaller pieces. At least I think it's dry. Yeah, it's very malleable, but it's so full of pine resin that it's probably that way because of that. So I'm gonna cut it here. That thing smells so good, man. I'd split these down, but hang on. This may not be as dry as I thought. I don't know if you can see that. You see right here next to my finger the glistening? That is wet sap leaking out. I'd touch it, but it's gonna be like glue. So I'm gonna set it near the fire, not quite in the fire. I can't see what you guys are seeing, so I don't know if you can see that glistening. But when I cut, this is the end I first cut off the tree. So with this sap coming up here, right where my shadow's passing there, it could be that right there is still alive partly. And under this, even though that thing, I mean, it's bleached white and it looks destroyed. It could have had a bit of life left in it. So we're gonna put it up here. And I'm going to pay close attention to that end, if you can see that. Can you even see it? Yeah, you can see that. I'm going to move it so it's actually focusing on that bit there. Where are we at? There we go. So, pay close attention to that. And this is the other one that was above it. Now, because that one was doing it, well, no, this one's not. See that end, and it don't look too bad. It's not glistening, there's nothing leaking or seeping out of it. They're so covered in pine sap, though. All right, this is what we're gonna do. Do a little V right there. And then when we ignite the tinder, it's gonna go right there, and then that's gonna go on top. And Bob's your uncle, for all you British people. And then I can finish crunching up wood and putting it on there as I want. All right, so to start this fire, I've got two knives with me. I've got this one by Milwaukee, and it's got no real area to strike a fire still from. But then I got this, my trusty French-made Opinel, and it's got a nice sharp spine on it, and so I didn't cut myself with a knife. I actually hit myself with a thing. Caused the police. So I can't strike this fire still with this thing. I mean, I might could, but it's ridiculously hard. It's all rounded, the edges are, so very sharp. Right out of the box I could shave with, but we're gonna ignore that and go back to the Opinel on this guy, because this will quite easily strike a ferro rods. So, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna do this now. Take my tinder, and with my hands, I'm gonna just make sure it feels nice and dry, which it does, and grass typically grabs a spark. And I know you kind of want to put it into a nest and still pull it apart a bit, but one thing you don't want to do is mash it into a tight ball, because you need space for the spark to fall down into. So, because it's just bits of molten shaven metal. That's gonna go there. You guys see this? I don't know what we're looking at. My shadow's in the way. There, that's a little bit better. I wonder where I can sit so I don't get a shadow in the way. You know what? It might work out anyway. So what are we gonna do? Stick the ferro rod in there, and I'm gonna pull the ferro rod away. If you push this into there, you're just gonna make a mess and scuff up your knuckles. And so let's do this. Sparks actually have to land in the grass. There we go. All that goes on top. You can still hear it. The wind is helping me out, actually. Set it downwind. And actually see that it's caught the pine needles already. Now I got that going. Move all metal objects away that you don't want to ruin the temper on. I can smell the pine. Holy cow, that smells good. And then I can just start select feeding it these sticks as I want. And since I've got depth because of those pine needles, it's gonna... I get smoke in my mouth. It's got plenty of spaces to drop down in with the hot coals and whatnot, but it's largely gonna follow this rock up that way, because I said so. Right, there we go. Now at this point, it's gonna be kind of hard for me to mess this up. And now with the stuff that you got that is wet, you just want to set it kind of next to the fire and around it so that the heat can help dry it out. And you'll just want to stack all your wet wood around your fire, and then on the other side of that you'll have rocks and whatnot. See, this is all just soaking wet, so we'll just put it next to the fire, and then the fire dries it out and you're good. But anyway, that's how I do it. It takes a while. Like, we've been working at this for about a half hour, but I mean, if you want a fire, you got to do what you got to do. So you either do the work and not and have a fire, or sometimes you do the work and not have a fire anyway. But that's how I do it. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next adventure. Bye.